Hello and welcome. My name is Lori Rubin. I'm with DxO, and I'm very pleased to have with us Visual Wilderness, Jay Patel, who is the owner, and also 3 of his contributing photographers. They're excellent photographers as well as instructors. I think you're really going to enjoy this. All right, so Jay, we're going to start out with you.
Hi, guys. I am the owner of Visual Wilderness, and the contributing photographers that you're going to hear from, Alan, Kate, Padma, are superstars. They do a lot of tutorials. Some of them write articles for us. Alan does free tutorials and webinars on Visual Wilderness. There are a lot of these tutorials by Alan, by Kate, by Padma, and they're super creative. So hopefully we'll see some of you guys on our tutorials, and good luck to everybody.
Great. Okay, so let me go ahead. I'm going to switch over to Kate. She's our first presenter, so I'm going to go ahead and make her the presenter. Let's have a brief introduction, and what is your focus as far as photography? What do you like to photograph the most?
I love landscapes. I'm all about the landscapes. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, and I came down to the southeastern United States for college, and I studied marine science. So I did that for a few years, and kind of on the side, just decided to take a correspondence course with the New York Institute of Photography, and I can't even explain how much I fell in love with it. I just took to it like a fish to water, no pun intended. So been doing that ever since, and started working with Nik when Silver Effects Pro came out, and pretty much haven't done a black and white conversion outside of Silver Effects ever since then. It's just my go-to program, and when Color Effects came out, I was a very happy camper.
Fantastic. Okay, we're going to go ahead and turn off her webcam so that you folks can see full screen. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
so
Kate.
Can see everything?
Yep, looks good.
All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you kind of 3 different workflows. The first one is going to be the quick and painless, just going straight from Lightroom into Nik and doing just a couple of adjustments and kicking it back out. And so the next one is going to be a little bit more complicated, and the third one is going to be much more complicated. So hopefully this one will go pretty quick. So I am going to edit this one in Color Effects Pro. And when I get in there, I am just going to make sure that this little box down here, Save and Edit Later, is ticked on for sure, because I want to make sure that whenever I do any editing within this program that I can come back and make changes later. Now, the last time I was in here, I was using the skylight filter. So that's the first thing that popped up, and that just happens to be the one that I want to use. So I'm going to add that globally, and you can see kind of a little before and after there. It's pretty subtle globally to the entire image, but what I want to do is I really want to bring out some of the golden color that is in this branch here. This was taken with a fisheye lens, and I actually just opted to straighten it out. So there is some pretty heavy distortion going on here, but I kind of like the effect. I thought it was fun. So when you add a filter, you can add it globally just like I did there and just be done with it. That's one of the wonderful things here. But what I want to do is I want to add the skylight filter again, but this time I'm going to use control points to confine that adjustment just to this area of the log in the front. So I'm going to take the plus control point and I'm going to drop it right here on the log. I'm going to extend that out a little bit because the tones in there they also match a lot of the tones in the sky. So instead of just dragging this thing all the way out, which will probably grab most of the photo, I'm going to hold the Alt or Option key, and I'm just going to copy that control point kind of up and down here, and then we'll see what that adjustment does. So now I'm going to actually take the strength of that and drag it up, and you see what that does to that log, how it really just makes those colors pop in the log. So if I look at the mask for that, that's what's being affected by this skylight filter right now. So if I want to make sure that it is confined almost completely to the log, I'll just add a subtract control point and take it out of the sky. And since that's a subtract, I can duplicate that one as well. Now, again, this is not a full lesson in, you know, A to Z Color Effects Pro. Just want to show you kind of some of the fun things that I like to do fairly routinely in this program. So I've been in here for a minute and a half, and if I do the compare button and I turn it off and on, you can really see how all of that color is just turned really, really rich in the log here. So I'm going to add one more filter, and again, tonal contrast. I don't like what it does globally to this image, so I'm basically going to do the same thing that I did last time. I'm going to add it to the log, and I'm going to copy it and make sure that I add some tonal contrast just to this log to really bring it out. And let's turn that off and on. Even better. So if I do the compare, here's before where the log looks kind of dull, and here's after where it's very, very rich. So I'm going to click save, and it'll save the image and bring me right back to Lightroom. And that is the quick and painless one. All right. So we'll do that one. And this one, I'm going to take a slightly different route. I'm going to edit this one in Photoshop first. So I'm going to say edit in Photoshop 2021. Now, I've already opened this in Photoshop just so we don't have to slow anything down for you guys. Let me move this out of the way. My wonderful little tool. And extend that out. There we go. All right, now this one I'm actually going to turn into a black and white image. And what I really want to do, anytime that I work in either Color Effects Pro or Silver Effects Pro, is I kind of have a game plan before I go in there. And my game plan with this is I really want to focus attention on this water and some of this spray. And I'm paying attention to the colors that are currently in that water, because it's going to make a difference as to what color filter I decide to use when I get into Silver Effects Pro. So my little selective tool is off to the right, but right now I'm just going to show you how to open it up from here. So filter, Nik Collection, and Silver Effects Pro 2. All right, let's make that a little bit bigger. Clearly, you know, you can come over here and pick a bunch of presets and things like that, which is fun, but I don't know, maybe it's just me being a little bit of a control freak. I like to come over here and deal with my black and white images the same way that I dealt with black and white film. So yeah, that dates me a little bit, but yes, I shot black and white film, and one of my favorite film types was Tri-X, which is down here, which is really great. And wow, that actually looks pretty good in of itself. So sometimes just coming through here and choosing your favorite film type is a great way to start. So I'm going to go back to neutral for right now. But when I approach black and white, I say, all right, when I shot film, I chose my film type first. So that's what I'm going to do in this program. And then I decided whether or not I was going to put a color filter on that on my lens for whatever scene I was photographing. So again, that'll be my next step when I get into this program. And so I'm going to come through here and try out the different color filters. And I really like the blue one, because remember all those blue tones that we saw in the water? The blue filter is going to brighten those. And so I might even make that just a little bit stronger. I've got a little bit of wiggle room. If I look down here at my histogram, I know that my highlights are not being blown, so I've got a little bit of space to play with and not without blowing my highlights. I'm always very careful about that. All right, so we've done our color filters, and at this point, I'm just starting to think to myself, all right, I've brightened the water a little bit. I want to bring a little bit more attention to this spray. And I really want to create some contrast back here, because I don't want the eye to be 100% right here. If I did that, I'd just kind of crop it and create a vertical photo or something. I want the eye to kind of bounce back and forth a little bit. So I want to have somewhat of a bright area right in here on these rocks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a control point just to those tones right there. Let's expand that out. And I'm going to increase my brightness a little bit. Now it's doing this in kind of a large area, but that's what the control points are really great at. And I'm going to add a little bit of structure, and I'm going to amplify my whites. And then I'm going to add another control point to the black areas to remove it. And so these two control points are kind of talking to each other. And so I can copy this one and say, yeah, I really want to remove that effect from this area. And I can copy this one, which is the adding the effect. I can copy that one and add it right here. Oops. And I can make my circles a little bit smaller, my little circle of influence. That's why. There we go. Right there. And that's the selective adjustments. So what I normally do is I normally do global adjustments and then selective adjustments, but in this one I really wanted to concentrate on that area. So there's the before and after, and you can see, and I'll do that one more time, there's before the selective adjustments and after the selective adjustments, and you can really see how that worked. So I'm going to add one more control point because I really want to bring some attention to this spray because I think it's an integral part of this image. I'm going to take my brightness up a little bit and the structure. Love the structure slider. And just a little bit of amplify whites. And anytime that I'm a little worried about whether or not I'm ruining some highlights in my image, I always come down here and I rely on the old zone system. I don't know if you guys followed Ansel Adams, but he was famous for his zone system. And so I rely on this to let me know whether or not I'm blowing out highlights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually zoom in to about 200% on some of this water right in here, and then I'm going to check my tones. So I've got lots of number 8. You can see those little hash marks. If I click on number 8, they'll stay there for a minute. And so you can see them all in here and all throughout here. So 8 is good. I've got a few 9s, just a couple of teeny tiny ones, hardly any. I think I saw a couple of them right there. And no 10s. And that's important to me. I just want to make sure that I don't have anything that's really getting overexposed. And so here is before and after of these selective adjustments. So whenever I process images, whether they're color images or black and white images, I really, from start to finish, want to make sure that I do very little globally and that I really treat it as if it was a film photo and I'm processing in the darkroom and I'm just adding little bits here and there to bring out the best of every image. So I am going to, I think globally, just add a little bit of amplifying the blacks, because actually I could do that a lot. Don't be afraid to drag these sliders. And maybe a little bit of structure to the midtones. All right, so let's do an overall compare from start to finish. So that's what we came in with, and that's what we created. And I just think it's better. If you want to add some tones in the finishing touches, I think, you know, the tones can be a lot of fun. I don't think I ended up actually choosing any of these for this particular image the first time I did it. So I'm just going to click OK this time. So, all right, that's the second image. The third one, this one took a lot of thought. This one I thought about ahead of time before I brought these images into Photoshop or Color Effects Pro, but Color Effects Pro really, really helped. So this is an image down at Sullivan's Island here locally, and it was taken right after or just before the sun came up. And so this was taken with a 16mm lens. So I've got this nice wide angle photo. And then I've got these images of a lunar eclipse. And so I don't know if any of you have shot a lunar eclipse, but they're a lot of fun if you have the opportunity. But then you get on Facebook and you get on social media and you see lunar eclipse, lunar eclipse, lunar eclipse, and they all look the same. So whenever I shoot something like this, whether it's this or the solar eclipse that happened a few years back, I always make sure that while I'm there, that I take some type of interesting foreground. Because this right here was my ultimate goal. I wanted to create a nighttime looking foreground to go along with my 3 moons. So we'll just go this way, edit in Photoshop, and we'll just edit the original this time. Yeah, go ahead. And there it is. And see, I was trying to save time by opening these up ahead of time and it ended up not working. So here we go. Doing it the long way. Okay, there we go. So in here, I just wanted to, now I've blended these images before. So this is part of working with layers in Photoshop, and this is not a layers class, so I didn't want to spend too much time there. So basically, I have one moon right there, and another moon right there, and then the original photo that I had with some stars properly exposed as well. So basically, all I'm going to do here is I'm going to use Color Effects Pro to concentrate on turning this foreground to make it look like it was shot at night. So I'm going to say Filter, Nik Color Effects Pro. Okay. Now it brought up the skylight filter, which was the last filter that I used in here. So you can actually see that that's a little bit more purple than it was. And that's not the one that I want. The one that I want, all right, I want to add a little bit of contrast right in here so that it does stand out. So I'm going to go down to tonal contrast and I'm going to click on that. But I don't want the water to be more contrasty. I just want these rocks in the foreground to be contrasty. So I'm going to take the control points and I'm going to click add. And so basically that will add it to whatever I'm clicking on and it will subtract the effect from everything else. So when I click on that mask, you can see that it's adding mostly to the rocks. So I'm going to duplicate that a couple of times and just make sure that I have all my rocks covered. And then I'm going to add a minus control point to the water. And I'm going to duplicate that a couple of times. And then I'm going to take a look at my overall mask and say, yes, indeed, that worked pretty well. I've got a nice soft transition between the effect on the rocks and the effect being missing from the rest of the photo. Now, at this point in time, I don't care what any of these filters do to the top portion of this image, and that's because I know I'm going to cover it up. So let's do that, and let's do, now these are a couple of filters that I really don't use very frequently, but they worked absolutely perfectly here. So I'm gonna add Monday morning, and I'm just gonna leave that here and maybe remove it from some of the rocks because I want it to make the water just kind of soft and flowing and make it look like it was taken at night. So I'm going to add this filter, I'm sorry, I'm going to subtract it from the rocks. Minus, there we go. And I'm going to bring that down because I really just want that effect on the surrounding water to kind of make it all moody. The two filters that begin with M here, these are like my Moody Monday and my Moody Midnight filters. There we go. And let's see, let's add one more filter to this, and it's going to be Midnight. Whoa, right? What is that? Here's where these shadow and highlight protection really comes in handy. So I'm actually going to say, yeah, let's protect my shadows. And so I'm going to bring this all the way up. And then I'm going to add some plus control points only really to the water. because I want this to be kind of moody dark water. I want it to look like it was nighttime. So I'm going to duplicate that a few times, and I'm just going to lower the opacity a little bit. I don't want 100% of it, just about 70% of it. I'm going to do that to that one too. I could group these, but all right. And so I'm going to copy that, and we're just going to add this to the background, and that'll help me give it a sense of near and far. And I'm going to make sure that I take the effect off of this foreground, because I added tonal contrast and I added that other filter, and I want to make sure that those are visible. There we go. Pretty good. Probably not as good as the first time I did it, because you know I spent more time. I'm not going to spend an hour in here and bore you guys to death. So we're going to click apply. I just want to show you really quickly how to get these two images on top of each other, and then I will show you the final image that I came up with after I blended the two in Photoshop. There we go. So I'm going to flatten the layered one with the moon, and let's just assume that this one has that nice Color Effects Pro foreground on it. But anyway, this is how we got our moon on top of the foreground. So I'm just using the move tool, and I'm clicking and dragging and getting a little warning, of course, and putting that on top of the foreground. So let's make that fit our screen. And I'm going to lower the opacity a little bit so I can still see where the horizon line is in the back. And I'm going to move this moon around until I think it's compositionally nice. So I'll leave it there and then bring my opacity back up. And I'm going to add a mask. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my brush, not a teeny tiny one. I'm going to make a bigger brush. But I'm going to do it at about 100% opacity, and that's the opacity way up here. And I'm going to remove, okay, the last time I was in here, I was using a hard edge brush. I want a soft edge brush to remove this effect 100% from the foreground there. But then I'm going to go down to about a 50% brush and go a little bit higher. And what this does is it helps smooth the transition from the dark sky to that moody foreground that I was supposed to create when I created this one right here. So this is the ultimate effect that I wanted, but I wanted you to see how that's done. And one of the kind of advanced ways that you can think about using something like Color Effects Pro or Silver Effects Pro or any of these plugins for that matter is you can add them to just a portion of your image. You can add them for a very unique creative effect and then blend them with something that looks very standard, like the lunar eclipse. So I hope this has kind of given you some fun ideas of ways to use the programs, and just wanted to answer any questions.
Kate, there was a question about, was the image of the spraying water in the final black and white or color?
The final one that I showed you was just this color version.
Okay.
So if I wanted to show you the final black and white, I'm just going to do a super duper quick edit in here to show you what it looks like in black and white. Yes, please. And so I'm just going to go through and basically do what I did, but I'm going to do it crazy fast. Blue filter, added control points. Brightened up my water. I'm going to add another one to right here with more structure. Okay, so let's just assume that I did it the way that I did it before. And so I'm going to click save, and it will bring it back to Lightroom. And there it is.
All right. Hey, thanks, Kate, very much. What we're going to do is we're going to switch over to Padma now.
Okay.
And Padma, I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter.
All right, so I am Padma Indua. This is my first time with Nik, but I've been a long-term user. I've been using Nik from I think 3 months after I picked up my camera. So that's going back almost like 9-10 years now. I'm not a full-time photographer, but I would like to. I would like to do this full-time, but anyway, I do a lot of flowers, I do a lot of architecture, and I do some landscapes. I'm not a morning person, so it's hard for me to get up in the morning to go hiking like 3 miles, 5 miles to get a good shot. So what you see here is like one of my best pictures, I think. Anyway, today I'll be showing you a couple of images. One is, this is taken at Tetons, Grand Tetons at Oxbow Bend. And this is just the fall time, so I happened to be there at the right time, I think. And so these are, so I specialize in light box photography. I bring flowers home. I have these couple of light boxes that I use. I place them, I spend some time arranging them, the flowers on the light box, and then I take the pictures so that I can show the translucency of the petals. So I specialize in that. But then sometimes when you print these, they're kind of pale. So I wanted to bring out the drama. So I'm going to show you how to do some cool tricks with solarization technique and Nik color effects. And I'm hoping that, you know, you will be motivated by looking at that. So let's go through. This is my raw image, no adjustments, nothing applied. Then I'm not going to show you how to do any adjustments in Lightroom, but I'm just going to show you from there. I applied basic settings. I just went through some white balance. I adjusted the highlights and shadows, whites and blacks. I added a little bit of vibrance, and then I applied lens corrections and removed chromatic aberrations. And I did, like no detail, no noise reduction, because I would rather do this in Nik plugins, and that's why I just completely eliminated all the defaults that Lightroom gives it to me. Now, what I do generally is going to edit in and then go to Photoshop just to make this flow going a little faster. I already opened the image here. A little cleanup that I have done already, that is, if you look at this bottom right corner, there, you know, like all the mud there. So I just did a content aware, I cleaned it up. And this is the time you actually go into 1-to-1 and then look at any lens spots, I mean, dust spots or anything, you clean up, right? That's the first step you should do, because once you apply all your plugins and everything, it's going to be a little hard to catch all that. So I would rather catch all the cleanup and any content aware fill, anything that you would like to do, cloning or anything, that would be your first step. And then I generally spend a little bit of time going through the image, saying that, okay, what are the adjustments that I'm actually looking for? This is the time that you definitely want to spend about 3 to 5 minutes thinking, okay, what needs to be done? And this will save a lot more of experimenting, trial and error later on. If you start with little notes, even a piece of paper, you don't need to go through this kind of elaborate observations. So what my plan here is, I want to definitely pop the yellows. I want to see them like come to life a lot more. And then these greens are a little dark, so I would like to pop the greens a little bit. And I want to bump up the contrast here just a tiny bit. I want to darken the sky and darken the water a little bit more. That comes under contrast as well, but in case. And I want to add the light, a little bit exposure to the middle of this image. And I definitely would like to bring up the reds, because this is just about sunrise time. So I would like to bring those reds, you know, you can do all of this in Nik. Now, at this point, you can decide on, okay, I would like to go into a couple of different plugins, which is Nik Viveza, and then do some individual color corrections, and then go into color effects. Or you can decide, okay, I'm just going to do everything in color effects itself. So I'm planning to do just straight up color effects rather than going into Viveza. But Viveza is a powerful tool. Hopefully in my upcoming classes, sometimes I would be able to show Viveza how I use that. I use it quite a bit. So at this point, there are 2 ways that you can open this image into Nik. One, you can duplicate it and then make it into a smart object. And that way, Photoshop, Nik actually remembers all the filters that you've used, but that also takes up a little bit more time. So for now, I'm just going to open this up into Nik. I don't use the side panels or anything. I like straight going into under filter, going into Nik Color Effects Pro. And there are certain filters, the presets that I would love to use. The very first thing for any of my landscape images that I would go for is the Pro Contrast. And the sunlight filter is also my favorite because it adds some kind of glow. But you have to be careful because it also takes away a little bit of the sharpness. So you just have to find that happy medium. And almost all my sunlight, sunset, sunrise pictures usually have some kind of glamour glow in them, either that or the brilliance and warmth, just to pop the colors a little bit and add more glow to it. So let's start with the Pro Contrast. So when you click on the Pro Contrast on those little rectangles there, it takes you into 4 presets. I generally go through every one of these to see, okay, what it does, just to get an idea. But I generally end up in the dynamic contrast because that's my favorite. Never take these at the face value. Always go to the right and then play with these sliders. And if you make a mistake, you can just come back again and fix it. It's not a problem. But if you don't explore, you don't see what it can do. I'm not a big fan of correct color cast, but I'm a very big fan of dynamic contrast. So I'm going to slide this back all the way to 0%, and I'm going to play with these 2 sliders. So dynamic contrast, see what it does in, correct contrast, and then dynamic contrast as well. So this is my global adjustment, right? But generally, I shy away from a lot of global adjustments in most of the cases. In this case, I do want this whole image to have contrast, and that's why I'm applying here, no problem, right? So if you click under the control points, you have the option to actually bring down on the opacity if you think it's too much. But at this point, I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm going to show you one more filter that I use for landscape images, that is graduated neutral density. So this eliminates the need for me to carry any kind of graduated neutral density filters, because again, that's extra gear that you might want to, you have to carry, and God forbid if you drop them, you break them, which I've done before. So and then I have much more control over here, what I can do and what I cannot do. So let's go through these presets here. The first one, it just applied a little bit of on the sky, except it also kind of darkened my trees as well. So that's the reason why you have those sliders on the right-hand side. But let's go through the next one over here. So this one is light in the foreground. I don't want to lighten the foreground because that's going to take away from my middle of the image. So I'm going to stick with the dark skies. And let's play with this. Right now, it's vertical shift 50%, but my horizon line is about 35, say 40% down. So I'm going to adjust that accordingly. So let's slide it back a little bit. So see how it changed. So it darkened the sky, but it just left the trees somewhat alone. But then you can definitely play with it a little bit more. Now, if you have a crooked horizon, you might want to fix it. But if you did it for artistic purposes, then you can definitely rotate using the rotate button. So it's how it is going to rotate. But at this point, it's just regular, 180. You can also put the number in there. Okay, now upper tonality and the lower tonality. This is what represents, do you want like a 1 stop or 2 stops or 5 stops, whatever you want to do, right? How dark you want to make your filter on the top. So I'm just going to bring it down just a bit more. So now you see already the colors are popping, even though I did not touch any colors at this point, but it still did it, right? Okay, so now lower tonality, you can actually make them a little bit brighter if you want, but I don't want to. I'm just going to leave it alone. Now you can also use this filter to blend the tonalities from the bottom to the top, and default is fine with me. All right, so this is exactly what I got. Suppose, because this is not a horizontal horizon line here, so suppose you don't want that effect showing up in the middle of the frame, so you can use the negative control point and restrict the effect. So that's, sorry, and you can adjust the size. So I'm going to hold the Alt button and duplicate it, and then drop it here as well, so that my graduated neutral density filter is not applied there. All right, so I'm happy about right there. Now I'm going to show you another filter to bring out the yellows. Remember, that's one of my notes that I have, like I want to pop the yellows. Okay, did it pop or what? Look at that. But that's kind of way too much for my taste. So I'm not going to touch any of this. I'm just going to let it be on the left-hand side. I'm not going to play with those. I'm going to change my settings here. I don't want a lot of light strength, so I'm going to bring that down. And I want the brightness, it's like minus 30%, so I'm going to increase the brightness to or minus 10%. And I don't want that much saturation, so I'm going to bring down on the saturation just a bit. And the contrast is way too much as well. So now, again, I don't want this globally. I just want it only locally. So I'm going to take the control point and add to the places where I want to see that effect. Now, again, hold the Alt key and duplicate the control points. And then we're going to work on the individual control points to see how much opacity that you want to play with. Now, just to look at the effect here, this is before the sunlight filter. This is after the sunlight filter. It makes a dramatic effect. But I also want you to zoom in to 100% to see if it kind of actually the sharpness is not lost at all, not bad at all. So I'm just going to leave it be. So let's go back to 25%. All right. So now I got the sunlight filter. Okay, now I'm going to do one more thing before we are done with this shot. That is to go into either brilliance and warmth, or you have the choice of going to glamour glow. Let's go into brilliance and warmth. So I want to add a little bit of saturation. So all these presets on the left side, you can run through them, right? One, this is neutral, so I don't think it made any change. That's before, after, very subtle change. Increase saturation, too much saturation for my taste. I don't like any of these, what it is showing, but then if you look at this warm colors, I kind of like the warmth, but it's made everything else very warm. So my goal here is, let me take this away, just to add the warmth to the sky, but not even here to my trees, because I've already worked on my trees using the sunlight filter. Otherwise, it's going to look really bad, like too much. So I am going to work on the saturation is going to come down just a bit, and the warmth is going to come down a little bit as well. And I'm going to just take the control point. So the trick is not to apply all these filters at the globally and not to apply at 100% strength. So I'm just going to show you how it changed see, it just added a little bit of color to my sky, but not a lot of pop, right? And it did not change quite a bit in my trees either. But if you want to see how, if you want to compare, see how, like there is, I think overall, it gave a boost to my image, I think. So let me just run through. You see the difference, right? Big difference. So now at this point, either you can say I'm done, or you can still go on experimenting, but I think I'm done with this image. It's pretty well done. And while this is saving the image, let me say something about sharpener, sharpening it, and then applying any kind of noise reduction. I'm going to turn this off. Okay, so this is my before. Wait a second. And that's my after. Now, if I think it's a little too much, all I have to do is go here and reduce opacity to say 80% or 90%, whatever, but I like what I see, so I'm going to leave it at 100%. So now I would like to, because I did not sharpen this image whatsoever, and I have the option to go to Filter, Nik, and Sharpener Pro, and then I'm going to go to the Raw Pre-Sharpener. I generally don't do a lot of stuff here. So you have the loop here, so I'm going to go and pin that right about there just to compare. Come on, pin it there, okay. And I can move it just a bit. And then I'm going to see what the auto thing does. So let's see, color points. And first I would like to see what did it do automatically. And then if I'm not happy about it, then I go into the color range and then say apply sharpening to my individual color ranges or something. But most of the time, this does a wonderful job at auto, or we can start going from 50% to 60%, 70%. You can do sharpen areas, but you have to be careful how much sharpen edges that you would like to go with, because sometimes if you're working any architectural images or even flower images, and then if you put this all the way to the end, it creates halos towards the edges, so you just want to be careful about it. And that's the reason why whenever you're doing this kind of sharpening, you want to make sure that you're using this loop to go around, see if it is creating any halos, especially in these edges. Like I see a little halo here already. So that means when I see the halo, I'm always bringing it down so that the halo disappears. Right now, the halo kind of disappeared. So this is what is causing. So you don't want the sharpen edges all the way to the end. So, all right. So I'm happy with that. That's sharpening. And this image is shot with 100, 100 or 200 ISO, so I'm not worried. But if that it's not the case, suppose I use like 400, 800 ISO, I definitely will go into Nik Collection and the define, and then also apply auto and see what it does. There is a workflow debate that goes on online that, okay, sharpening goes first or noise reduction goes first. Instead of asking somebody else, I would say that just play with it, or do both and change the order of things, like how it goes. So suppose you can do the image duplicate and change the order of things and see what you like, and whatever you like, you stick with it, rather than asking other people for their advice. Because if you ask me, I give you one advice. If you ask somebody else, they'll give you a different advice. So, so we went from there to there. Not bad, right? Lori, any questions?
There is actually a question. Bob was asking why use pre-sharpener instead of the output sharpener?
Oh, because I'm still in the raw mode here. I'm not doing any output sharpeners generally when I am trying to print something or publish it or something, because I'm still in the tip mode, and then I like to use the pre-sharpener here.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
All right, so now we're going to move into the second one. So this is roadside flowers. Every time my car and myself, we see flowers, and on the roadside, I always carry clippers, and I start clipping them, bringing them home so that I can do this. And so far, I have not gotten arrested, so that's a good thing. So, all right, what I did here is, this is pretty much out of the camera, except I fixed a little bit of blemishes. So if you see here, these are all the blemishes that I fixed. So let's see, open. I think a few blemishes that I fixed. It's not much that I did. So that's all, okay? I didn't do a lot of things. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. I have a very rigid workflow for this. So I'm going to just jump through all the steps, and if you need any explanation, I'm definitely glad to give you some explanation. I'm going to do Control J, and that's for duplicate. And if you have Mac, it's Command J. And then I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Invert. And the shortcut key for that is Command I, Control I. Okay, so it's basically inverted the colors. And then I'm going to go into Image, Adjustments, Black and White. And neutral black and white, I'm not touching anything. And people ask several questions at this point. I want you to hold those questions off. Why would I want to go into image adjustments? Why can't I go the adjustment layer? Those kind of things I've been asked many times before. The reason why I don't need to do adjustment layers is because in this case, I already have my duplicate layer. So even if I don't like it at some point, I can delete that and I can get back to my original layer, no big deal. And I don't want to deal with a lot of adjustment layers at this point because this is a very straightforward workflow for me. So I already got my neutral black and white in inverted colors. Now I'm going to go into filter, going to Nik color effects. Okay. You can do this in Photoshop too, but Nik has a lot more control over the solarization filter compared to solarization filter that is available in Photoshop. So I have never used it, not even once, other than trying it once, and I said, no, that's not for me. So this is my favorite. By the way, I taught this technique last Friday. The images are pouring in my private group. People are going crazy, placing all kinds of flowers on the light box and then making all these techniques. So now you already saw what it did. Okay, so what kind of drama it is creating already. So that is my neutral, and look at it. And I didn't even try anything. It just took the first available preset. So I'm going to explain a little bit to you about on the right-hand side. There are only two sliders here, saturation and elapsed time. Saturation on black and white is not going to do a lot of difference. You know, see, I'm going all the way to the left. I'm going all the way to the right. It's not making a lot of difference. There is just a little color shift, that's it, not a big deal, right? So I'm just going to leave it alone. Now, look at the elapsed time. If I go all the way to the left, versus all the way to the right, it pretty much disappears. So now this is where the beauty is. Like, you know, you play with these. Then I realized that it's not like I cannot do this in one shot. I need to do this in a couple of times. So now pay attention just to the stems and the leaves. Okay, it looks like nice rim lighting coming through. So don't pay attention to the flowers, just pay attention to the stems. I think for the stems and the leaves, I want to be somewhere there, okay? But then now pay attention to the flowers only. I want my flowers to be a little bit more light in them compared to my stems and leaves. So I think I want it at what, 36% for the flowers and about 47% for the stems. So that I know. So what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to leave this here. Oh, first of all, I have to remove all these things. Sorry about that. It remembered all my old. Okay. All right. Now let's try again. Okay. So that's where I want to keep my stems. About 46%. Okay. So I'm going to say okay. It's going to take a minute, even though I converted this image to 8-bit, it's still taking a little time. Okay, and then I am going to go to I'm going to uncheck the top image. I'm going to go to the layer, the duplicated black and white, neutral black and white image, going to filter, and I'm going to run through the color effects one more time, the solarization filter. And this time I'm only going to process for the flowers. Okay, so the solarization automatically comes up. Now I'm going to play again. This time I'm only going to pay attention to the flowers. I want a little light in my flowers, right? I don't want them too dark, so somewhere there. And that's about 36%. So I'm going to say okay.
Edna, while that's processing, there was a question about if you could recommend a light box. That this person is saying your work is amazing, so she wanted to know.
Thank you.
If you could recommend.
Sure. So the light box, if you would like to buy, the best place is best light box, light pad is Kaiser Slim Light. I'm telling you, I've used other light pads from Amazon. Those are like a little cheaper than that, but The Kaiser one, you can actually take it into field if you want, and because it works on both battery and the AC, and it's dimmable. You don't get all those options for a lot of the cheaper light boxes, so pay attention to it. And you want to buy a light box, if it is one-time investment, it's a couple $100. I think you should buy the biggest available, which is 13 by 19, I think. And then if you go to Kaiser website, and it's Padma 15 is the coupon, and they give 15% off. All right. So now I have this is for flowers, so I'm going to name this so that I don't get confused. By the way, thank you so much for your kind words about my work. Thank you. And this is for leaves and stems. I don't have to name that much, but anyway. So my flowers are going to be on top of my leaves, and then I'm going to apply a mask. And by holding my Alt key and click on this Add Layer Mask button, it's going to create a black mask. Now, using the brush tool, which is B for brush, but I'm going in here, and then I'm going to put a flow and opacity at 100% because I want that at 100%. And so let me see if I can increase the size. And my hardness is 0, more. And if I'm working at home, not demoing like this in a hurry, I take my time and go 100% and then slowly bring in the whiteness in the flowers, the brightness in the flowers. So okay, let's say that I'm happy here and I'm not touching anything else. So that's my before the mask and that's my after the mask. And if you look at from here, I went to here. Now, oops, tell me that this is more dramatic compared to the white when you print it, especially because I printed a few and that's what I see, and I really love. This looks like liquid silver, in my opinion, or liquid mercury, or mercury is already liquid. Anyway, so you can choose to do this in color as well. I don't want to go into the details because we don't have a lot of time, but I just want to show you one more image that is, I didn't even go through the layers. This is, I assembled this in Lightbox, on the Lightbox by just pulling them up and then rearranging them. It takes a half an hour or so, but that's how I spend my days. And then this is what I got using the solarization technique. I didn't even do it in layers, it's a straight up conversion. Okay, now I want to show you one more image. Let me, so this is the Palouse picture. I don't have the time to demo this, but I just want to show you what Nik can do. And this is the Lightroom adjustments, right? And then let me go to the folder and then I process this in Nik, and that's the end result that I got. And so if I show you, that's the end result. So you can imagine, so I went from there, and then I made all these notes, what exactly I would like to do. So I said, okay, I want to pop the brown colors. So I always pay attention to what I want to do before I go and experiment. So that saves me a little bit of time. So here I already wrote, pop the brown colors in Viveza. And then I said, the buildings are looking a little bluish. So I said, white balance correction in buildings, also in Viveza. And then I said vibrance in greens and less exposure, also in Viveza. And these two are going to be in color effects. What I did is here, increase contrast globally. And then I said, add glow to the middle greens. So all this, I have done it in Nik Viveza and Nik Color Effects Pro. So Laurie, if you ever bring me back again, I'm going to demo this picture when we have more time.
That would be great. A lot of people are asking about the Lightbox information. So in
Sure.
that survey, go ahead and just ask, and Padma, maybe you can send me a link.
I have a suggestion actually.
Okay.
So on Visual Wilderness, I do have quite a few articles written. If you go to my page in Visual Wilderness, which Jay, if you can pop that link over there. And then I also have a couple of courses that I've done, video courses. So consider your subscription if you can, so that you can look at my courses and see if you like them. I have extensive information in those courses. Those are like a 90-minute course. One is for just how to shoot, and the second course is how to post-process. And I think I've done adequate job for somebody to get started with the Lightbox.
Okay, so Padma, are we done with this for now? Or were you going to
Yes.
show something else? Okay.
No, that's
All right.
yeah.
Thank you so much. That's great. Okay, our next presenter is going to be Alan. So let me go ahead and I'm going to make him the presenter.
Okay.
There he is. Hey,
Hey,
Alan.
everybody. So I am Alan Shapiro. I am a New York-based portrait, food, and flower photographer. I work for clients like Apple and Bose and the Ritz-Carlton Hotels and a bunch of others. And then I also do a lot of work for myself because for me, photography and in particular post-processing is very, very therapeutic. So I like to spend at least an hour a day editing my photos. I have been a huge fan of the whole Nik collection for about 12 years now, which is just about as long as I've been shooting. I am not a classically trained photographer. I picked it up as stress relief. And one of the first people I met way back when was Lori and a bunch of other folks who were at the then original Nik software company. And it has been kind of my go-to place for black and white processing. Now, for those of you who know me, I do a lot of black and white work with flowers. And we can stop sharing, Lori, my screen. And
Okay.
okay, and so for me, there is something really interesting. This is a project for a New York-based hospital of special surgery and orthopedics. Let me make sure that I can maneuver. So they originally said, you know, we want color, and then they changed their mind and they said we would like a black and white series. So my go-to place was Nik and Silver FX Pro. And this was one of the test images that is now being blown out to like 50 others. So one of the great benefits of working in a software program that allows you to create your own presets is the fact that you can go from X to Y. This is a different client who just wanted something soft, and it's one of those images that I wasn't really happy with in color, and I have since processed it probably 20 or 30 times in black and white, each time looking for a different effect. And my go-to place is Nik. So again, just a couple of other examples, and then I'm going to show you my workflow. One of the other things that I want to call out for all of you is I sort of have two aspects to my work. There is the work that I'm doing for clients, and very much like Kate, I am looking to be fully in control. And then there is the work where it is for myself, where I'm in inspiration and exploration mode. And that's where I just love diving into the Nik collection. And if in fact I'm working in black and white, going into silver effects. And I also happen to really love analog effects. Because sometimes I just want to relax. I want to clear my head. I want to see what's possible. And then I can save things and then revisit them later. Now, I can tell you, I'm going to jump in on an image. Let me go edit in Silver FX Pro. And here's something really important. I always edit in TIFF format and ProPhoto RGB, which is the largest photo color space, even though we're working in black and white. And because I am also an occasional fine art printer, more than occasional, my resolution is set to 360 because I'm working with a larger Epson printer, and that is the preferred DPI and resolution. So those are the presets. Again, that's just for me. And let's let Nik open. Is it going to open? Yep, there we go. Now, can people see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So I've got a couple of places that I want to start with. I mean, the first one is I want to look at presets. So I've got a bunch of my own that I've saved, and I can quickly cycle through there and see what happens to the image. I can also go up into the the pre-populated presets that Nik has provided. But here I am looking at a bunch of things within this image. One, I love the structure of the image and I want to enhance that. So the linear aspect, particularly in black and white, becomes very strong. So now it's how strong, how black should the blacks be, and how bright and structural can I make the main flower. But I always will go through and look at a bunch of what I've done before, one, to remind myself, but also because sometimes I find myself getting very surprised. Like for instance here, you know, I added a little bit of a toning to the image. Now this is not a pre-populated one, it's just one that I was playing around with, and I may want to revisit that. So let's go back to the beginning. I am up here, I'm an Ilford film fan. Whoops, what just happened? Here we go. I am an Ilford film fan. So this is my Ilford preset. And one of the things that I want to do is the first place is I'm going to go right down to my color filters, because if you remember the color of the images, of the image, there was some green. So I'm going to start looking at what happens when I put a green filter over my virtual camera, so to speak, and what starts happening to the image. And I may look at some of the other things. I know there was blue there. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to film types, and then there's the film sensitivity, which is a totally different way of starting your image. So there's presets, there's film type, because if I don't want to go to Ilford, I can look at all the others and I'll get varying levels of contrast and grain and what have you. We're going to stick with Ilford. But then one of the other really fascinating starting points for me is with the film types and sensitivity. So in this case, I know there was some red in the main flower, so I'm going to come down to the red slider. I'm down over here, and I'm going to play, and I'm going to brighten it up a little bit. And I know there was some yellow, and you know,
hey, Alan.
Hey, yeah.
Alan, do you mind expanding your screen a little bit on the upper left-hand corner of the green button? Yeah, or just stretch it. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
You betcha. Sorry about that. And then I'm going to want to see what happens to the green. So here I'm making global adjustments to get myself started. So not much is happening to the green, although if for those of you who can tell, it's getting a little bit more dramatic over on one side, and I'm liking that. So I'm going to bring my green way down. I think I'm going to take my red a little bit further down. And now I'm going to come a little bit lower, and I'm going to play in curves. Now I love playing with curves. One of the interesting things, the way I taught myself curves was actually in Nik software, because a lot of the presets have preset curves, and it let me sort of look and analyze. So one of the things that I want you thinking about as you're playing around in presets is learning from them and being inspired from them. In this case, I definitely want to take my blacks in a little bit. So instead of going up where I can get a nice fade, if you're looking for a matte effect, I'm going to come in a little bit and go a little bit more dramatic. Now, very subtle moves here because I don't want to go too far. And then I want to come up to my highlight areas, and I'm going to play with that. Now I'm looking at the center of the flower, and I'm going to come down. And now I am going to, in this very quick move, I'm going to add a control point. I'm going to come into the center. I'm looking at my flower. Let me expand my control point. I don't want to affect anything else, so I'm going to drop a few sort of constricting points later on, but I'm going to look at what happens when I subtly brighten it. Now, brightness for me is always a little bit dangerous. I think I may just want to look at amplifying my whites. And then I definitely want some structure. And in this case, I also want some fine structure. So 2 levels, it's sort of like bigger branches on a tree, and then the very tiny, sort of hair-like branches on a tree, and what is getting enhanced. So we want to do a little bit of both. Now I said I want to drop some other points because I don't want that affecting any other areas. And you can see if I just do a before and after, you can see in the darker areas, I am able to just restrict where the effect is. Now, the last thing I'm going to do before I save this and jump into a more complicated image is I'm going to put another point down here, and I'm going to see what I can do to the stem to bring a little bit more attention to it. I think I want to look at a little bit of contrast, and again, a little bit more fine structure and a little bit more structure. And now here I'm going to option click. I definitely want to make that a much smaller sort of circle of influence. And I'm just going to create a few more points. Oops, didn't do that. And I'm going to call this one almost done. The other thing, if I had unlimited time, I would probably go down and I would look at what some of the toning effects will allow me to do. Now, this is, let's get out of that. Huh. It's frozen. Okay, so we're saving the image. I'll show you more on the next one. So we have that done very quick. So here's where we started. Here's where we got to. Totally different look and feel. Now I'm going to jump to this image, which is something that I have long been intrigued by. I love these very exotic orchids, and I'm curious as to what I can get them to look like in black and white. So back to Solver FX Pro. And while it's opening, any questions, or are we good?
Sorry, it takes me a minute. We are good so far. Beautiful images, Alan.
Okay, so here I'm going to jump into the preset library because, again, I don't know what I want it to look like yet. So there are times I come in, like I said earlier, and I know exactly what I want, and I will jump right into film types. But here, I want to see what's possible. I know I want it kind of dark and moody, and so I'm looking at things like underexposed. I'm looking at things like high structure as a totally different kind of look and feel. And then I think I may want to go down to push process, and just in the interest of time, this is an interesting starting point for me. I have the moodiness in the background. I may want to try and pull out some of the detail in the green behind. But the first thing I want to do is I want to play with the main colors. So if you remember, with this orchid had red sepals, I think they're called, and a kind of yellow-orange center. So I'm going to go down to film sensitivity. I'm going to go back to, let's see, there's a new one that Nik just added. I think it's the ADOX. Oh, that was intriguing to me, but on this image, definitely not. I'm just going to pick AGFA. Look at the interesting curve that's there. We're going to play with that in a second, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into film sensitivity, and I'm going to see whether I want to brighten or darken each of the main colors. So I'm taking my red down to about -30%. I'm going to look at what happens to my yellows. Now notice I haven't even gone into the primary adjustment, the global adjustments yet, because the first thing I want to play with in my workflow is getting the color balance right. So I'm going to take it down a little bit more. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to see what happens when I bring my greens up. So I'm getting a little bit here. That leads me to think that I can either do one of two things, and you're going to know which one's right and which one's wrong. I can go and I can look at my shadow detail overall. I can go up into my global adjustments, but that is going to make everything that qualifies as a shadow, including some of the shadows in the leaves, a little bit too bright for my taste. So instead, I'm going to go and I'm going to create a control point in the background. I'm going to make it fairly big, and I'm going to start seeing what I can do. Do I want to reduce the contrast a little bit? Do I want to open up the brightness? And here, there's not that much going on up top, so I'm just going to move this around my image. and I'm going to see where I start picking up things, and brightness isn't working for me, nor is contrast. So I think I'm going to go and I'm going to look at amplifying the whites just to get a little bit more detail down there. And I think I want a little bit of structure. Nope, I don't want selective color. I want structure and fine structure. I always use those as kind of a combination. And then I'm going to duplicate this point. And put it a little bit over here and see what starts happening. And then the other thing I'm going to do before I start playing around with other things is I'm going to look at what happens. How far can I take kind of my focal point? And there are two here. So there's one. And in this case, I'm going to create two different control points in each of the two places. I'm going to sort of drag to select them and group them. And so now I can look at the effects kind of together rather than doing one at a time. And do I want a little bit more contrast? And do I want to see how far I can push my whites? And there are times I will go back and I will, sort of look at where I started and where I've gotten to. And then the last thing I want to do in this particular image is I want to have a look at whether a little bit of toning is going to help me and take me to someplace really interesting. So here I am down in my toning panel. I've lately, for whatever reason, started loving ambrotypes. I'm not sure why. So I'm going to start here. And then the other thing I want to do is I'm going to sort of make that a little bit stronger. And then I want to look at maybe changing and getting into a teeny bit of split toning. So do I want to cool off my highlight areas just a little bit so that I've got a nice balance between warm and cool. Now, the other thing I can do, and I'm going to show you because we like to experiment, I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to take my background to a cool place and see how strong I can make it. And then I'm going to take my highlights, which in this case would be the paper being revealed, and take it to a nice warm tone and maybe bring it up a little bit. So I happen to like that a little bit better. And the last thing I do, because again, I'm here, I just want to explore. I want to look at, will a border make a difference? So one of my favorites is number 8. And I'm going to play with the size. I want to maximize how much image I'm seeing here. I definitely want to play and look at what the spread is doing now in a more free-form sort of, a negative holder being filed down or whatever this look is. There's all sorts of subtleties that start emerging when you play with the clean to the rough. So I'm doing that. And then the other thing I sometimes do is I click on varying the border. And what that does is, actually, I'm not really, it goes through whatever algorithm to give me different permutations of this. I'm not sure what technically is happening, but I love playing around with that. I'm gonna, I think, take not my hue down, but I'm gonna take the toning down a little bit. And I really like what I'm seeing here. So of course, when I find something that I like, I'm going to go in and I'm gonna create a preset, and we're gonna call this Orchids for Lori. And I'm gonna save it. And so now it's in my preset, so I can revisit that later, and I'm gonna save it out. And there's that image. That's it for today.
That is fantastic. Well, there are lots of compliments on your beautiful images. Here's one, says, Alan's flower portraits are stunning. Really enjoy seeing how he uses silver effects. So that was a treat. Question for you, Alan.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite silver effects standard preset? Somebody was asking about that.
Oh, hang on. I'm a wet rocks kind of guy. I'm a high structure kind of guy. And I'm I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. The Triste, is it Triste or Triste or Triste number 2?
Okay, well, what we're going to do here is let's bring back everybody. Thank you very much. This has been a real treat. Like I said, we haven't had this many presenters at once, so I hope that everybody got some tips and tricks from everybody. But Jay, you got a great group here at Visual Wilderness. So Jay, do you want to close out with anything?
If you do subscribe, you do get subscribe to Visual Wilderness streaming service. You get all the presenters, all tutorials, online classes, not only what we have done in the past, but all the ones that they do in the future as well. So please use their page to sign up, and they'll get credit for it. I think I apologize to everybody that we ran out of time. If we get a chance, what I would like to do is have everybody on individually, and then go ahead and do some more in-depth, Lori. We can work on it offline sometime.
Yeah,
I would love that.
That's great. Everybody brings their own special flavor and recipes, and I love watching you guys work, so it's been a real treat. Okay. All right. Well, I think this is it. We're going to go ahead and close out. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Kate, Padma, Alan, Jay, thanks for joining us. It's been a real treat. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.